Okay, so we've got our Nicolas Cage on the sphere here, but it's not mapped terribly nicely. It's very stretched out. Let's just hide that box fast. Delete that box. Go away, box. So we're going to use a modifier to to help map this a bit more the way we want to. Right? If you go up to got the object selected, go to the modify panel. Oops. And then modifier list and go down and look for UVW Map. Right, there is a bunch of different modifiers for mapping materials, but for the time being, just look at UVW Map. Now, UVW Map, basically, UVW translates to XYZ in material terms, but we'll talk more about that when we talk about unwrapping next block. You don't really need to know that just now anyway. So you'll see here what it's doing is it is now projecting the image. You'll hear the term projection mapping. I'm going to put on orthographic. There you go. So this orange square is the UVW map, and what that's doing is it's basically taking the image. Like imagine that is the orange box is framing that image, and they're pushing the box down onto the sphere. So the image is getting placed right on top of it, and then it's the same on the bottom. If you can change the shape of that, so at the moment it's planar, which means it's just a plane, it's just a picture. You can change it to cylindrical, and you'll see it's now taking the image and wrapping it around, much like it was done before. You've got spherical, which is what the default would have been, so it's kind of wrapping the image around in a, like it's wrapping it up on a present sort of thing, in a sphere shape. Shrink wrap, I've never understood what the point of it is, but there you go, that's another way of doing it. Box, we'll project it from 6 different sides, so you can see we've got 6 different Nicolas Cages on our ball here. And face, we'll map it to every single polygon, which I don't see used often, but you might use it. XYZ to UVW, you don't really need to know, because look at the state of that. That's pretty cool, actually. Whoa, look at the tiny Nicolas Cages. Yeah, so what you're generally wanting to do is find the shape that fits, well, not necessarily the shape of your object, but how you want the material to look. So I think the sphere is a bit mad, so I'm going to change that back to cylindrical. Looked okay. Cylindrical has another option called cap, and what that does is it basically takes an image and presses it down from the top and bottom of the sphere. Now that's crap, obviously. We don't like that. You can adjust the size of the UV map a few different ways. So you can change how it's aligned, so basically how it's fitting onto the object. You can click fit if it's too big or too small, but you can also just go down the modifier, click gizmo, and then you can move the gizmo around. Now you'll see the top isn't moving because I'm not moving the top left, right, up or down. I'm not moving it on Y or X. I'm just moving it on Z, so it's not actually changing. If I move that to the side, it's going to move that around. You can scale it, so you can grab your scale tool and you can pull it up. You can pull it in like so and make a scary moon face Nicolas Cage. So you can play around with this until you get it to work the way you want. Now, using a sphere and Nicolas Cage probably isn't the best example. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to my trusty pistol, which is here somewhere. There it is. And it's an orange for some reason. Okay, so let's put Nicolas Cage on that. No, right. These are all separate pieces, remember? So I'm just going to select them all, and then I'm going to apply the material, and it'll say assign to object, which would be the one you let go on, or assign to selection, which would be everything you got selected. So I can put that on everything, and it's mapping them all individually. It's actually doing it pretty well, which is annoying. It's because they're such simple shapes, I guess. But you'll find that there will be times like here where it stretches the image to fit. So what I'm going to do is, well, let's use a different material, so it's a bit more gun looking. So I've got a metal texture here that I've applied to it, and there might be some bit that actually looks pretty good, but there might be some bits you want to change or fiddle about with. So let's find right here. This is all squished in. You see that? That's already got a UV map on it. Whoops. That's probably why. I'm going to delete all these. There you go. That's a mess. This is the problem with using models for different tutorials. I keep forgetting I've done things. So there you go. Look at that. Look at the state of that. That's what you want. So you might apply the material and get this kind of mess going on. And what's happening here is Max doesn't really know how you want to apply the material to the object. So you would use a UVW modifier. So I'm going to go down to my UVW modifier, UVW map, sorry. And then that's set to planar. So what it's doing is it looks great that way, but it looks crap that way. And that way is just dreadful, because what it's doing is it's sort of streaking the image right across the front there. So what I'm going to do is just go and play with this. I'm going to try box, because it's a sort of boxy shape, so it'll probably work pretty well. And it did work well. Now, this is still a wee bit squished in here, and I don't like that. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to scale the gizmo with gizmo, the scale tool. I'm just going to pull it out like that, and you'll see that it doesn't adjust it that way, because I'm not making it bigger that way. I'm only making it wider. So that's going to then fit on there much, much better. And I would basically go and do the same for all my different objects. Now, if you've got all this attached together, this is potentially, I'm just going to actually go and attach all these together. I'm just going to convert all these down actually. Convert to edge, well, I didn't mean to do that. Convert to edgeable poly. So on. I'm just going to attach this whole thing together, right, just to show you how this works. Now, it's often easier to just keep this bit separate that you want to keep separate until you've done everything, and then you can attach them all later and they'll keep their material data. But if you have attached everything first, if I attach that material now, if I put a UVW map on it now, it's going to affect the entire thing. So the planar is pushing it down on everything. Box is pushing it on each side, and that's actually working pretty well. I didn't expect it to work so well. You can see here at the top it's going a wee bit funny, because that's the cylinder. So it's pushing down the image from this top and the sides, and what that means is that you're getting this seam where they kind of meet. So what I might want to do is go back and unattach that. So I'm going to go back and select element, select the gun barrel, and then I'm going to detach that. And I'll just, no, not detach the element, I'm just going to detach it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the UV map on that. That's actually looking pretty decent just now. But I'm going to go down and put a cylindrical map on it just to make sure that it works just the way I want it to. So UV map. That's working okay, but you can see it's kind of mirrored there, which looks a bit weird. So I'm just going to go down to cylindrical. And that's aligned the wrong way. And you see that the gizmo is not sitting. So I'm just going to change that to Y, just where it fits. I'm going to click fit. And now that's going to wrap that material all the way around that barrel and look really nice. Now the front here looks pish, so I'm going to push cap. And that'll tidy up the front there. Cool. So you see this bit here, this line, that's called the seam. So if I click on the gizmo, you'll see that line's green. That's where the image starts here and then wraps all the way around and finishes there. You're pretty much always going to get a seam, but you can hide it. So I don't want that to be so obvious. So I'm just going to rotate my gizmo round, so the seam is underneath where we don't really see it. Now I also want to maybe, change some of the materials on here. I don't want a metal handle. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to detach that handle as well. I'm just going to detach you. And I'm going to make a leather material. So I'm going to make my physical material. I'm going to go to my base color, general, bitmap. And I've downloaded this leather, which I'm then going to put on there. And that looks pretty mad. It's all squished up at the bottom. It's all stretched here. It's not great. So I've already got a UV map on this, and it's set to box, which is why it's looking a bit odd. I'm going to change that to cylindrical as well. Oh, I've got the wrong bloody thing selected. Whoops, sorry. Yeah. So I'm just going to apply a UVW map to that. And then just get a shape that's going to fit that. So let's actually try box. Box might look okay. That looks alright. It's a bit squished down at the side there. So again, I might want to go and stretch that out. Oops, I'm stretching the actual model here, because I am a silly person. I want to get the UV map, the gizmo, and stretch that out. So that's alright. The texture's a bit mad, but it's a bit big, right? I don't want it to look as big as that. So what I'm I just hit my toe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tile it, and that's another thing you can do with UVW maps. You'll see here U tile, V tile, and W tile. This is how many times it's going to place that image within the sort of boundaries of the gizmo. So if I change that up to 2, and then I'll do V on 2, yeah, it's got a bit of an edge to it. So I'll maybe try and find a different material. But you can see that it's made the image smaller because it's applying it 4 times to each side of the gizmo instead of once. Now, to avoid this, the easy way to avoid it is to search for seamless textures. I'll show you how to make your own later, but I'm going to go for leather seamless texture and see what we get. So what seamless means is basically it'll wrap around itself. A lot of them you need to pay for, so I want a free one. That one's, you're better off with big images as well. This one's really small. 280 by 280 is tiny. Is that one like, that could be alright. That doesn't look very seamless though. We'll just go with that one. No, that one anyway. Even though it's toty, we'll just use it anyway. So I'm just going to go, I'm going to save image as, I'm going to save it in here, and I will change the bitmap here to that one. And then you'll see, yeah, that's much better. And the image is quite pixelated because it's quite a small image, but you can't see the seams. So that's quite nice. Now, don't worry too much about that just now. One other thing I'm going to change is I don't want that to be as reflective as the rest of the gun, because it's, you know, not metal, it's leather. So in my material here, I'm going to change that to advanced, and then you'll get the option for reflections. And I'm just going to turn that down to like 0.1, and you'll see it's much less. It's still pretty shiny actually. I'm going to put the roughness up. So what reflections and roughness are: reflections is how reflective it is, so how shiny it is, and roughness is how kind of precise those reflections are. You can see there that's got a very definite reflection going up and down there because the roughness is really low. The higher the roughness, the more spread out the highlights are going to be. So I'm going to change that to 0.8, and you'll see now that it's more diffuse across the whole thing. And then I've got my lovely pistol. Now it's, you know, I could go in, maybe want to change some of the materials to other types of metal, just to make it look a bit more interesting. But we do exactly the same techniques as I did with that. If I'd attached it all, I'd be detaching bits. If I hadn't attached it all, I wouldn't have a problem. So I'm going to provide you with this file, and you can play around with it and just try applying different materials to it, basically. So maybe change this guy up, maybe change this up, whatever you want to do, basically. And that is the bare bones basics of materials. Now, as I say, there's way more to do with this that we will go into in time, but for the time being, this is all I want you to worry about, is getting an image onto the object and mapping it in a nice way. The reflections here and the roughness, that's a bit of an extra thing, but you know, I can imagine you'll probably want to do that because it does look nice. Let's see what it looks like rendered. So there's no lights or anything, so it might look a bit pish. There you go, that looks pretty decent. Leather looks crap, but fair enough. So there you go. Basic intro to materials.